Have I mentioned how much I hate tracking down electrical problems? So this is a few days later since the previous shot, and basically I decided to turn the camera off and just go through the car as much as I could to try to trace down these electrical problems. And to be honest, there seemed to be so many of them, and every time I think I fixed one, I just end up finding another. So I still have not figured out what is going on with that circuit inside the car. And like I mentioned previously, I'm just trying to use that circuit because there's really nothing on it at this point, because the power mirrors have been removed, the lighter has been removed, and pretty much everything else that's on that circuit. So I have been doing a lot of research trying to figure out what on earth could be going on. And I have looked at all the connections. I have looked at all the wires that are at least easily exposed. There are a few that probably travel up underneath the fender here that would be difficult to just look at, but I guess I gotta kind of trust that those wires are protected. So I talked to somebody about this on the phone the other day, and they said, well, you know, typically those fuses inside the car are gonna be a problem that's inside the car, which it sounds obvious, but I'm still fairly convinced that the damage that's on this wire loom right here, I did open it up a little bit and there are exposed wires. So I do think that, at least for now, it's worth trying to fix these wires so that we at least eliminate that as a problem. So if this could be a line, you know, a power wire leading into the car that's shorting out, and just for whatever reason it's servicing that fuse and causing the problem. So I will try to take this apart and show you guys exactly the damage, but best I can tell, there's also exposed wire here, but it looks like the plastic on the wire there is still in okay shape. So I think for now I will try to cut this piece off, expose the wire, see how bad it is, and I may just wrap it in electrical tape, each wire, just to do a quick test and put a fuse in and turn the car on and see if that solves the problem. But you know, like right here, there's some wires that have been cut off at some point in time. I'm not sure what they go to, but they are, I mean, I guess they are exposed. So, you know, covering the ends of those, you really would need them to touch a ground to get a short. So let me dig into this wire loom and see if this is the problem for that circuit that's in the car. So I pulled this wire hose apart, and there are several wires that are going to be damaged in here. This looks like it's been maybe even hit a couple different times, and somebody had tried to repair it at some point because there is some extra electrical tape packed in here, but you know, this wire is completely exposed. See if I can get focus in on there. So that one's completely exposed. You know, that one's got part of the sheathing torn off. This one has a lot of the sheathing torn off. I have unplugged the battery, so I'm not gonna electrocute myself here. There are maybe 5 or 6 wires that are exposed in here, and you know, most of them look like they're probably going to be like 14 gauge, maybe 12 gauge. This one is significantly larger. I'm not sure what gauge that's going to be, but there's quite a bit of damage to this loom right here. So I am definitely going to go ahead and fix this, even if this doesn't fix any of the problems that we're experiencing within the car. It's definitely something that needs to be fixed. And you know, here's those 2 wires. It's like a green and a black wire that were cut off at some point in time, which branch off of this. So I'll probably be able to look at the wiring diagram and see what items come off of this whole loom here. But yeah, there is definitely some damaged wires in here. So after I did my inspection of the wires, I actually found that, you know, the copper strands in each wire were actually pretty much unscathed. It was just the sheathing on each of these wires that was damaged. So I was going to cut the wires, put some heat shrink tubing over them, solder them, you know, try to do all that. But considering that the copper in each of the wires was in good shape, I decided that for now I'll just I wrapped each one in a heavy dose of electrical tape. And so I think there ended up being 5 total wires that were exposed. I did check the one that's right here, and there were no exposed wires here, so I'll probably just get some you know, corrugated hose to cover this, but these wires are actually okay. There's actually also some rubbing that was here, but this did not get to the wires, so ultimately I think this was the main problem. So let's go put a fuse in the fuse box on the inside of the car and see if this fixed the problem. So I just put a 15 amp fuse, and it's basically, it's the one in the bottom right hand corner. The fuse panel basically says cigar, and looking online at the wiring diagrams, that has power mirrors, a cigarette lighter, the ACC for the stereo, and a few other things. But anyway, so let's see if we put this over into accessory, if we hear any clicks or pops coming from the fuse block. Okay, so I think I did not hear any click come from the fuse panel, so let me pull that fuse and we'll see if it's blown. So this is the fuse that I just pulled out of that 15 slot in the fuse panel, and it is not blown. So if we got lucky, fixing those wires over there fixed the issue, but you know, really until we've driven the car some and gotten it out on the road again, will we really know if that fixed it. But for now, I mean, I blew at least 5 or 6 of these in succession, just putting the car into accessory. So I think we're making progress. So I will see about getting that fuse tap installed and getting the power run for the daytime running lights. Okay, so before I get all this buttoned up, basically I went around the wires themselves and bundled them up with some electrical tape. So to protect the piece that was really chewed up right through here, I've got a new piece of wire conduit that I've just kind of stretched around the existing wires, and then I'll wrap that with a lot of electrical tape basically to secure it. So once I do that, I've got to get this all secured back. I went ahead and put a piece of wire conduit over my new accessory wire for the daytime running lights. This is just because there is no fender liner right now. That debris and water and everything else is going to fly up in here, when we're driving it. So this is just a temporary thing to get the wire protected for now. We'll come up with a more permanent solution as we develop our plans for the engine bay. But for now, I've got this wire protected. I'll have this patched, and then I'll go ahead and get this buttoned up and get the fender back on, and then we'll move to the front to finish the install of the daytime running lights. Okay, just real quick, I want to make sure you saw how this was finished before I put the fender back on. So, this got wrapped really well with electrical tape, and then it got covered with the wire conduit. Then I wrapped it again in electrical tape and then reinforced it with some zip ties. I basically did the same thing here, but only used the zip ties to reinforce where that part of the hose was damaged. And then finally, I fixed the wire loom right in here with the same technique basically. So I think that should get all the wires nice and protected that were questionable inside this fender. Before I got too excited, I did go ahead and put a multimeter down there to check the circuit, just to make sure that at least we were getting power once the key was put into the accessory position. So everything checks out. We've got power down there. We're still not blowing that fuse when we put it into accessory. So I'm really positive that this was hopefully the culprit and why we had so many electrical problems inside the car. So I was gonna film what I was gonna do inside the car, but the position of the fuse panel and how cramped it is inside of the car just made it really difficult to get a good angle for the camera. So I'll just explain to you out here what I'm gonna do and what I've done, and then I'll show you the final product if it's worth seeing. But so going back a few days when we talked about the fuse tap, we're now ready to use that. Ignoring the fuses, this is how it came when it was packaged. So you basically have your standard fuse, or what will go in your standard fuse, and then a pigtail which will go out to your new accessory. Now this fuse is the fuse that I basically pulled out of the car. It's a 15 amp fuse. It goes in that particular slot. And then the light kit actually already has a 5 amp fuse in line with the power wire. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use another 5 amp fuse for this guy. Sorry, heat index was almost 100 degrees today. The sun has gone down, but whoo. I did put a multimeter on I pulled the fuse out, put a multimeter on both of the little slots to determine what was the draw side and what was the power side for this particular fuse. And what I found was when I put the key on, I basically was getting power, 12 volts power in the bottom slot where the fuse goes in. So that's basically the power side, and then the top side was reading 0, so that's gonna be my draw side. That's what actually goes out and feeds the rest of the circuit. So when I put it in the car, I'll have to make sure to put it in just like this so that the power side is at the bottom, and then the draw side with my new accessory wire is to the top. So I'll go ahead and get this installed. I'm probably gonna go ahead and cut this off and solder the wire and heat shrink and all that good stuff inside the car. Again, it's just difficult to see in there. We'll have to do some more of that when we get to the rest of the wiring. So I'll go ahead and get this installed. And then before I get everything buttoned up, I'll go ahead and do a test run to make sure this does work and that there is no other problems before we complete the installation. So I will get the fuse tap installed, and then I will come back and show you what it looks like when it's complete.
This is the fuse tap in its final installation. I do have some more wires that I need to reroute a little bit just to clean this up, but just wanted to show you the fuse tap here in the fuse block. And I did have to trim a very small amount of plastic off the corner just so the fuse tap would fit, but that's what it looks like. Now, the only thing we have left to do is to get back up under the front bumper and finish installing the wires for the daytime running lights. So I will go through that process of splicing the new wires into the existing wires and how I do that.
Of course I would forget to turn on the microphone, but here I was just explaining the routing of the wiring from the fuse block up to the passenger side headlight where the daytime running light controller has been mounted. The module was fastened securely to the body just beside the headlight with 3M double-sided body trim tape. At this point, I have already permanently connected 2 wires on the passenger side. I'm going to show you my soldering process on the last wire on the driver's side. I have already stripped about 1.5 to 3/4 of an inch of the sheathing off of the wires, and I'm going to place the appropriate size heat shrink on the wires, making sure the heat shrink stays clear of the area I'm soldering to prevent it from shrinking due to the heat transfer around the wire. I like to fan the strands out on both wires and lace the wires together with the twisting action. Make sure that all ends of each individual wire are tucked into the connection to prevent them from poking through the heat shrink. Next, I apply a small amount of flux around the exposed wires. I use a small hobby-style soldering iron because it allows me better control of the iron and it's lighter. I have adjusted the heat to about half of the soldering iron's maximum temperature. Of course, you can't see anything with my hand in the way, but I am applying the iron to the bottom of the wires and placing the solder on top of the wires to allow gravity to help pull the liquid solder into the connection. Because there is a fair chance that this connection may get exposed to moisture, I'm applying a little dielectric grease on the connection to help keep the connection protected from the moisture. Slide the heat shrink tubing over the wires and use your favorite heat source to shrink the tubing. A heat gun is my preferred method. And there you have the completed connection. Give the wires a couple of minutes to cool before handling. I always check the connection to make sure that the wires are secure by giving a slight tug. As always, follow all standard safety precautions when soldering.
The last thing we need to do, at least for right now, to make sure that the lights are working is just to safely route these wires up out of the way. So I'm probably just going to tuck them up here and zip tie those all together so at least their connection is out of the way. When I route these wires, I want to make sure that they're out of the way of anything that could pinch or damage the wires when the bumper goes on. But I also want to make sure that these wires and their connections stay away from the openings in the bumpers where they could get damaged by debris or more exposure to moisture if it happens to rain while I'm driving the car. I've temporarily put the bumper on just so that we can finally see if we have fixed the lights. So I will put the car in the ignition in the first position. And there you go, daytime running lights. So these lights will basically come on and be white when the ignition is turned into the accessory position, and then when we go to use the turn signal, I know they're flashing fast, we'll have to work on that. It's just because the draw of the LEDs is a lot less than the factory bulb. So we got 5 flashers, and then we have our daytime running lights. And let's make sure they turn off when the car is turned off. Now, they will stay on for, I think, 30 seconds after the car is powered off. That's just a feature of the daytime running light kit. So, man, I didn't think I was ever going to figure that out. But there you have it. You have the complete daytime running light kit install from GReddy. That was a lot of hot, sweaty work over the course of 4 days. And essentially each day I kind of took the list of items that were on that fuse and basically ruled anything out that I could easily. So I checked the radio, I checked the mirror wiring, I pulled the interior door panels off. I kind of poked around inside the dash for any loose wires and things like that. So, you know, today was basically what I kind of knew all along, and that was the damage to the wires that are under the fender. I probably should have just started there to begin with, because it probably wasn't safe regardless if that was the problem or not. So it does look like everything inside is working. I'm not tripping any fuses right now. I had actually pulled the radio out of the car thinking that maybe there was some bad wiring in behind the radio or who knows. So I suspect now that when I plug the radio back in that will work as well. So yeah, that was a lot of random work to get to where we're at today. Basically, I do think that this kit is fully functional now. So the white daytime lights come on as soon as the car goes into the ignition goes into accessory position, turn signals work, all that good stuff. So I feel confident that it is properly wired now, and it'll work the way we want it to work. So I do have a few loose things that I got to finish up tonight. This kit, you know, I don't have any complaints. It's really nice that it comes with the hole saw that matches the headlights. Luckily, I didn't have to drill the holes because that was already done for me. But based on everything else that I saw, that shouldn't be any problem for anybody. So, again, this kit is not specific to the Rocket Bunny kits or anything like that. It can pretty much be installed on any vehicle. So if you're looking for a nice set of daytime running lights, I would look into this kit. Again, I purchased mine from Injuku Racing, but they basically direct order it from GReddy, and I will put a link in the description to this part number on the website. So I hope I covered everything with the wiring. I think I mentioned early in the video that the colors might matter, or this color goes to the driver's side and that color wire goes to the passenger side, and the reality is it probably doesn't matter, because whichever wire you send the signal to, it's just going to turn those lights on. So I wouldn't sweat over which color needs to go where on the driver's side or passenger side. But again, if you want the constant white lights, you're going to have to use that yellow wire that this kit comes with and power it into an accessory, something that's switched and 12 volt switched power. So thank you for watching my video. If you have any comments or questions, please leave those down below. You guys have been phenomenal with leaving me helpful comments on my last few videos. So I will try to respond to any questions that you guys have. Like I said, this video was totally back and forth in what we were trying to do. So in future videos, I may go into more detail on fixing some of this wiring, but for the purposes of trying to get this video done, I was just trying to rush through and get everything done so I can get these lights working. So please like and subscribe and give the video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys in the next one. Ignoring the beeping for just a second, I did plug the radio back in, and it looks like we have got power back to the radio. I do realize there's a few speakers that look like they're going to have to be replaced, or some wiring checked, but we do have audio now. Fixing these wires also gave us the lights for the license plate back. Still don't have reverse lights, which I think that might be a switch that we need to get replaced. But for now, we've got daytime running lights, radio, and a few other things inside the car. So it definitely was worth the time fixing those wires, because there's definitely several items that were not working because of the damage to those wires.